So, this is a very pretty diagram that I did not make. Well, I did, but then some really nice slide wizards made it look pretty. So, this is the thing. We always have layers of security controls, and because nothing is 100%. So we'll have, and when we say layers, they've got to be different layers. So sometimes people are like, oh, I'll just put 5 firewalls in, and you're like, no, that's exactly the same control 5 times. So we start with identity. In AI specifically, we've got our responsible AI, so our content and prompt filters. Then we've got network security controls, and then maybe we have egress out to the internet, depending on if your thing is public facing. We also have in there, and I'll show you later on, we also have monitoring. And so monitoring would be if something got breached, because it happens, it does. If something gets breached, then we go into containment. How quickly detection and containment. How quickly can we pick up on it, and how quickly can we contain it? And if something was breached, we always want to minimize the blast radius. We call it blast radius because we have to use war words for everything. And the blast radius, well, we do. I mean, I don't know.
It's a battle, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we do militarize security terms a bit too much sometimes, but that's the phrase we use. So if an identity is breached, say someone gets an account, which happens fairly regularly, someone gets phished. It's like someone like my mom, my mom's not here. Someone like my mom who would probably click on pretty much any link going, and then she puts in her password, if she can remember it. And then you collected a username and password. Yes, actually that's her protection, she can't remember it. But, and then that account gets breached. If that account has minimum permissions, and you also have detections that say, hey, wait a second, this account is suddenly trying to access all these things that it wouldn't normally access, even if it's denied, and it gets flagged, then we could shut that account down really quickly and remediate. And so even though there was a breach, it was minimal what actually happened. And that's actually what we want. If there's going to be a breach, we want it to be as small an impact as possible. And that's why we need all these different layers, because even if a breach happens, the breach could get stopped and it doesn't go too far and it's easy to remediate. Rather than, I don't know if you've seen, are people aware of, and I don't know all the details because I don't, in the UK at the moment, a lot of the UK supermarkets have had a lot of attacks, like the big UK supermarkets, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Marks and Spencer, they've been offline. I've been getting a lot of emails from Marks and Spencer's, let me tell you. And it's been ongoing for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now I have no idea, what's going on. I'm not privy to any information on what's going on. But it must be fairly significant because it's been going on for
That's
weeks.
only on the first 2 boxes though. That's what they're attacking you. They're trying to get to the bottom 2 boxes. But they're attacking you on the first 2 boxes mostly.
Mostly, but here's the thing, if you compromise an account,
that's 1% though. They're attacking the 90% on the top box.
No, disagree. So of course everyone's bashing around on the exterior, the network, but this stuff is almost irrelevant if you compromise an account.
You can take them offline on the first 2 boxes.
But if you manage to compromise an account, a legitimate account in an environment,
you can steal money at the end of the day.
you can get in and then you start to poke around.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember is when we're thinking about attacks, it's not like occasionally, but often not, attackers will breach something, an identity or the network or whatever. They're not going to find what they want immediately. They have to mooch around. So they might find an identity, it might be no good to them, but then they'll use that to enumerate in the environment what they can, and then they'll start to find other things and move around. Often attackers, when there are breaches, they often find they've been in there for months, even years, before people even notice. So it's not like, oh, I breach something, there's a huge attack immediately. Often they're in there for months before they get what they want. So, but if you get an identity, some of this stuff doesn't even matter, because this is brute forcing the exterior. But you're right, it's not that this can't happen, but generally now, because we're more identity centric, they concentrate more on trying to compromise an identity, because that will get you more.
Inside.
Yeah, that'll get you inside, yeah. And also, because, like I was saying, because we don't have just a solid data center with everything, this is peripheral anyway, but it does stop people moving around sometimes laterally. It's still useful, but Nowadays, the identity stuff's like way more important. Anyway, here's an example. Look, here is a securely networked architecture for you. Isn't it beautiful? So we've also, again, we have examples, we have samples. I won't make you do this yourself. But, and I'm going to this is an internal facing one, so we put all of the resources into a virtual network. Do people do that normally? Yeah, oh, some people look pained, but yes, I get. What?
On-premise cloud versus virtual network.
Yeah.
Both on-premise cloud is virtual network based, otherwise it won't work in the cloud.
Yes, but, well, it depends on your topology, but yes. It doesn't make you though. You can build this stuff and have it just sat there in your tenant. You can, because I've done it many times. And then we can subnet things for further isolation if you need to. I'm not going to go, I don't know, how long do I even have? We've been going forever. So, as long as you want, so. But look, this is like an example of stuff that it doesn't force you to do this. You could just build these like resources and it won't force you to do this, although it will shout at you in Defender, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But do think about, some of this stuff is not that hard, it really isn't. So please think about it. NSGs, these are super important and they're really easy and they're free and you have no reason not to use them. And I remember I explained to a colleague internally, one of my teammates about this. So a network security group is kind of like a layer 3, layer 4 firewall, don't take the analogy too far, but essentially it allows and denies IP addresses and ports, which is why it's very similar to a firewall. But we use this to sort of isolate things. Usually they should sit in line with a subnet, however you're subnetting around, and then it goes down the rules in priority, just like a firewall would, so priority 1, 2, 3, and it stops. If you're doing pretty much most modern apps, the only thing that you need opening, it's really easy, unless you're doing funky, weird stuff. If you're doing a modern web-based app, the only thing that should be open is 443, in and out. And I know that sounds like, yeah?
There are a number of other places where the app service is trying to reach out to some update service, some certificate store, and all of them, then you have to start opening up, otherwise you run into other issues. So outbound is always better.
Yeah, I know, well, depends exactly what you're doing, but I'm talking about, though, most updates, I suppose it depends. Okay, so most update services would be HTTPS nowadays, would they not? No. The IP address would change maybe, but the port number would be 443.
Yeah, the port, yes, but with the IP and some of the other stuff.
Well, this is sort of more for internal segmentation in your tenant as well. And certainly, again, you may need to reach out, but we'll get onto that. You're jumping a slide ahead, sir. But we should be using this stuff, and I know it sounds really basic, we're just going to restrict all the traffic to port 443, but again, if you have an attacker mooching around your tenant, they've got in, however they've managed to get in, when they enumerate things, if they can find other ports to poke around on that will actually accept it, it's a way of them finding things. Now, it's not that they can't not find things on 443, but again, it's all about putting like layers on to make it harder for them. And this is, because everyone has zero trust, I know it's super cheesy. It's actually it actually means something now. About 5 years ago, it was just totally a sales buzzword. But now it actually means something.
I mean, it's not a product?
No. Oh yeah, and if anyone tells you it's a product, that's also a lie.
That's a lie.
Zero trust is not a product. Zero trust is a lot of different things that is, it's really common sense, but again, the problem is with security in general. Security is a lot of common sense, but to get it right and get it right consistently is really hard to do. And that's the same with zero trust. And like it sounds really stupid just having to, only make sure if this is all web-based stuff that only 443 can get in and out of here. But again, it's a good thing to do because if someone compromised in here or out of here, it makes it more difficult for them to start poking around. Anyway, and always use private endpoints. Don't go out to the internet if you don't need to. Everyone know what a private endpoint is in Azure? Just, yeah, good. Okay, use private endpoints for all the things, please. We love private endpoints. And here's an egress. So this is one where we actually do have to go outside because, of course, sometimes your applications, whatever you're building, is going to have to face the internet. But please, for the love of God, put a web application firewall out. Do not just chuck if it is a web app, it must have a web application firewall. Now, if you don't use the Azure one, I'm not super bothered. If you want to use your Palo Alto or whatever, and you run it as a virtual appliance, you can do that. It's just more complicated topology-wise, because you have to run a VM and stuff, which is a pain. But also, sometimes people ask, is it WAF and front door or WAF and application gateway? Oh, I should have asked you this before I changed the slide. Anyone know the difference when you use one or the other?
One is a global service, the other is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. Well, yes. So yeah, if your traffic's just staying local, use an application gateway. If you're doing global traffic, then use front door, because front door is a CDN as well. You can't deploy WAF without one of these two. It has to come with one of them. So that's the difference in how you should choose. I won't say much about WAF apart from WAF's pretty cool. If you have another third-party WAF you want to use, again, I don't mind as long as you've got the capability. You use whatever you want. But Azure WAF's pretty nice. It's got a nice set of default rules as well that are pretty solid. They've got the OS top 10 web app vulnerabilities and stuff. So yeah.
Sarah, if you want to have a short break, that's okay.
Oh yeah. Do we want to have? How long have I been going for? Too long, probably.
Well, no, not that long. Well.